welcome. The topic with the editorial today is safety deficit. What is deficit? Deficit is shortfall, something which is less than what is required. So, safety, there is a shortfall of safety. Safety is not up to mark. These are the meanings for this word cluster. Now the subtopic. The Kozhikode air crash shows that there can be no compromise on airport infrastructure. So the subtopic speaks about the air crash at Kozhikode airport and warns that airport infrastructure is something very important and there can be no compromise over the safety of airport related to its infrastructure at least. Let us see how the passage explains it. The tragic crash of an Air India Express Vande Bharat relief flight in Kozhikode, in which 18 people, including 2 crew members, lost their lives and many were left severely injured, is a forceful reminder that there are no acceptable risks in aviation. So this is the opening sentence for the passage, and it gives sort of both the description as well as the wording conclusion. The description is that the air crash is a tragic one which had 18 deaths, which included 2 crew members, and injuries were done to not many. And this accident or this incident is a powerful reminder that aviation risks are not at all acceptable. The next sentence. Although an even bigger disaster was averted. See, here we find the use of although. This is important. Let us go to the whole sentence first, and then I will tell you how to get the links wherever you find words like although, since, notwithstanding, things like that. Although an even bigger disaster was averted by absence of fire in the aircraft, the crash snuffed out the lives of many returning home from Dubai after a long traumatic separation from loved ones in the pandemic. So this is the sentence. So one of the outcomes of all is that there is contrast of statements within the sentence. Now what is the contrast? The contrast is between the although clause and the rest of the sentence. The although clause speaks of something that avoided bigger disaster, and the rest of the sentence says that the disaster took lives of lot many travelers returning home from Dubai after having the distressed separation due to pandemic. The pandemic held them at Dubai away from the family, and while on return journey to their families, they died midway or sudden death. So this is a contrast. The although clause says that bigger disaster was averted, the rest of sentence says that those who died were going back home to their family and friends after the pandemic. This is one outcome with although. Now this although clause, although and even the bigger disaster was averted, this clause also links the sentence with the previous sentence. Now this although clause has words like disaster, bigger disaster or disaster you can take. Now we are talking in the previous sentence about crash. So this goes to these words, tragic crash. It speaks, this although clause speaks about the nature of the crash. So this is how although clause links to the previous sentence. So let us go ahead with this one. Although, so the bigger crash was averted due to absence of fire. Since there was no fire, if there would have been fire, the disaster would have been more severe. More deaths would have been reported, but there was no fire, so uh, whatever the loss was relatively small. The crash snuffed out lives. What is snuff out? Snuffing out refers to sudden deaths or sudden losses, uh, sudden end to anything. So sudden end to the lives of many returning home from Dubai. Many people coming back home from Dubai after a long traumatic separation, after a long distressed separation from their loved ones in the pandemic. So they would have come back earlier if there was no pandemic. But since the pandemic was there, they had to wait over in Dubai, away from their family. This was traumatic. This was something distressful, not a happy thing. Many Indians could not only return home from countries where they were employed, studying, or traveling, although they desperately sought flights back home since March. So it speaks about several Indians who were looking to come back to India ever since March. This is August, and they were willing to come back home, rather quickly return. They were willing to come back home as soon as possible. This is what the sense carried over here. Once the pandemic was declared in March, they were looking ways to quickly return as soon as possible, and whatever means they could get to travel back to India, home from countries where they were employed, studying, or traveling. So those who were studying, employed, or traveling, the tourists, they were all willing to come back home once the pandemic was declared. Uh, they desperately sought flights back home. This gives the meaning that they were looking for uh, ways and means to travel back home desperately. So, for those who took that long awaited trip on August 7th, so this is speaking about the August 7 incidents, those who were on the trip on August 7, it ended in disaster. The end of that trip was a disaster. The crash of the plane. There are clear pointers to the dangerous nature of flight operations at Kozhikode Airport in the midst of strong monsoon, even with availability of an instrument landing system. For the tabletop runway carved into undulating terrain. So this this gives an overall picture of the infrastructure uh, of the setup at Kozhikode Airport. It says that uh, there are clear pointers. There are clear pointers, clear indicators that the nature of flight operations at that airport was dangerous. It was not smooth, it was dangerous due to lack of proper infrastructure or due to other uh, conditions available with that area. And this is dangerous due to strong monsoon. This is one thing. Even with availability of instrument landing system, even if instrument landing system is mechanized system that helps landing of airplanes, and even if it is there, a strong monsoon uh, makes landing difficult or dangerous at Kozhikode Airport. For the tabletop runway carved into undulating terrain. What is undulating? Undulating is spoken about land that has smooth ups, hills, and smooth falls or valleys. Uh, so this airport is carved out of that landscape, which has smooth slopes. Uh, what is tabletop runway? I have brought a picture for you to show the tabletop runway. Let us see. This is the Kozhikode Airport. It is carved out by flattening a hilltop, and the whole airport has a long stretch. But if you see it closely, it is elevated some 50 feet above the adjoining areas, and uh, and the end point, if this is the end point of the runway, this distance is taken as a short distance uh, from the safety point of view. So if a plane skids uh, to this extent, it will fall down by over 50 feet, and that is the disaster. So this kind of elevated runway is called tabletop runway. Let us go back. Even with the availability of an instrument landing system for the tabletop runway carved into undulating terrain, this has been carved into smoothness. This tabletop runway has been carved into smoothness and to support the prevention from unforeseen accidents. Uh, but that much of smoothing is not sufficient. This is what it looks like. Let us see what the passage says. There are problems with visibility if a far shorter safety area at the runway end than optimal, and absence of arrestor systems that could stop an overshooting plane from falling off the edge, as it happened with this aircraft. So this has lot many things to speak. This sentence, there are problems with visibility. It says that visibility becomes very important for runways of this kind. So this monsoon brings about problems of visibility. The safety area after the runway end point of the runway is quite short. It is a far shorter. Far shorter means it is very short. Too less. This is how we speak to emphasize a thing. A far shorter safety area at the runway end than optimal. What is optimal? Than what is comfortable. What is required as comfortable. It is far shorter than comfortable. And absence of arrestor systems. What is arrestor system? It is a mechanical system to arrest overshooting of a plane beyond runway. So whenever a plane is likely to skid out of runway, this arrestor system stops the plane. It is a ground system. It is located on the runway, and that keeps check on overshooting of aircraft. That could stop an overshooting plane from falling off the edge. So it will prevent fall off the edge of a tabletop runway, as it happened with this aircraft. And this aircraft had the same incident, but because arrestor system was not there, it skidded out of runway and down by over 50 feet. Which of these factors, along with the monsoon impact, led to the disaster will come clear with a professional investigation. Now it says that the final confirmation can be had only after professional investigation as to which of the factors. Now, what are the factors it is talking about? It is talking about monsoon impact. It is talking about absence of arrestor system, and it is talking about instrument landing system. So, which of these factors would actually have caused the damage will be clear only after professional investigation. The Civil Aviation Ministry should make a full disclosure on the technical evidence gathered, the integrity of which will be scrutinized by safety organizations worldwide. See, India doesn't make aircraft, or rather planes like the one which crashed. So the whole world buys this kind of airplanes from large companies which are located in USA. Definitely those customers, those countries will look forward to the actual evidence as to why this accident occurred, and what made the pilots to what went beyond the control of pilots during this crash. So, and for that, it is very essential that Civil Aviation Ministry must make transparent and full disclosure of the technical evidence that may come out. It should not hide any information. This is the thing, and this reporting will be scrutinized by safety organizations worldwide, because the whole world is customer for airplanes like this. Apparently anxious to project an image of normalcy, the ministry allowed the airport to restart flights in a day, while the accident cause was yet to be deserted. This is one thing which gives a kind of allegation to uh, the government. It says that ministry apparently appears anxious, although it is uh, not so. Apparently anxious to project an image of normalcy. So ministry is uh, projecting an image of normalcy, although it is anxious, and has allowed to restart flights in a day, although the cause is not yet known. If rainy conditions existed during the landing, as Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has said, these may persist during the rest of monsoon. So, if the rains were the main villains causing this crash, then such rains are likely to persist for the whole of monsoon. So, flights should not restart in a day. This is kind of suggestion or a point of worry. Each flight must therefore be considered for a potential diversion to a safe airport nearby in bad weather. This is a suggestion. It says that the flights should be diverted to a safe nearby airport during this bad weather conditions of monsoon. Significantly, the admission of DGCA that the key recommendation of runway extension at Kozhikode made almost a decade ago was not possible due to land acquisition issues. Although the facility could still support wide-bodied aircraft, strengthens the view that corners may have been cut on safety. So, what does it say? It says that recommendation for extending the runway was done 10 years ago, but it was not possible to extend the runway only due to problems of land acquisition. And besides the fact that whatever be the size of runway, it is supportive of wide-bodied aircraft. This runway is sufficient for even wide-bodied aircraft. This gives the view about the fact that the safety was there. It was not like that the safety was not there. In view that uh, corners may have been cut on safety. Corners may have been cut on safety means there was nothing lost or nothing deficient about safety, and uh, it strengthens this point of view. The runway supports wide-bodied aircraft is a fact that strengthens the safe nature of airport. The instance of an Air India Express plane suffering a tail strike in the same airport last year should have led to full assessment following up on the recommendations made after the 2010 crash in Mangaluru. So this is another incident. What is the incident? The incident that Air India Express plane suffering a tail strike in the same airport last year. What is a tail strike? The back side of the strike, if it hits the ground, if the back side of a plane hits the ground, it is called tail strike. And that occurred sometime in last year, and a full statement that should have had full assessment following up recommendations after 2010 crash in Mangaluru. There was a similar incidence of crash what we have today. in Mangaluru. Mangaluru also has tabletop airport. So these were things where the tail strike was not fully assessed last year. Since the visible cause of Friday's crash was an overshoot, the runway continues to pose a threat. So the airplane overshot runway is a threat, and that threat uh, will remain in the minds of all those who are traveling. Bad meteorological conditions such as rain and wind and runway surface problems such as stagnation of water or rubber deposits that contribute to skidding endanger passengers and crew. This is a simple sentence that says that there are so many factors like rain and wind, runway surface problems, stagnation of water and rubber deposits on the runway. And these contribute to skidding of the plane. And the planes landing over there cannot take brakes. It will skid out. These put passengers and crew to danger. Every air safety incident diminishes India's reputation. The Kozhikode crash should lead to a fresh review of all risky airports. Transparent remedial action must be taken immediately. So this last part puts some analysis over the possible factors that would have led to the crash, and in that it is suggestive of the factors like rain and wind, runway surface problems, skidding of the plane, uh, carelessness in the way, uh, like not assessing the tail strike of last year properly. These put passengers at risk as well as crew at risk, and these air safety incidences, if these go down, these diminish, the India's reputation will diminish. This is what it suggests on the basis of above uh, concluding remarks. The 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 crash at this airport should be a warning to take care of other risky airports as well. This is what it says, and it adds that transparent remedial action must be taken so that confidence of travelers and crew builds up. So this is the passage. Thank you. Thank you with the request to like and subscribe this channel.